Hi, I'm Mike McCormick here at GBTA Legislative Summit live in Washington, D.C., and I'm joined today by Representatives Randy Forbes and Albert Wynn. Guys, thanks for coming, spending some time with our group today. You're terrific.
Thank you,
some
Mike.
really insightful comments. I think our members really appreciated hearing from both of you today. So first off, I got to tell you, the question I always have is, do you think today's environment is really that radically different than when you were both in office? Has it changed that much, or is it just what we're all seeing and hearing out there in the media? What is it? What's the view in Washington today? What do you think?
Well, Mike, I think it is dramatically different. I know when I first went in 10, 15 years ago, you could take the back row, for example, the Armed Services Committee, where I served, and you could put them in a room and you wouldn't pick out the Democrats and the Republicans. It would be hard because of the issues. I think today we've got just a much more polarized nation,
right.
And because of that, you are hearing the screaming and yelling, and we don't have the same opportunities that we used to have to work together.
No, that's absolutely true. I was on the Energy and Commerce Committee, and the same thing was true. We worked in a bipartisan fashion on business issues and promoting the economy, and we didn't so much focus on partisanship. Now, I hear stories of, well, we don't want to give that side a win, or we don't want to give the other side a win. So it's definitely more polarized. It's also a bit nastier, I think. It's more of a got you, snarky kind of attitude that's not pleasant, and it's not conducive to getting work done.
Do you feel like you have a different perspective now being out of office, kind of outside looking in a little more? Do you feel like it gives you a different perspective than when you were there?
You know, Mike, I don't think a different perspective. I think an evolved, more educated perspective, because one of the things I think Albert and I both agree with is everything you do informs kind of where you are now. One of the great things is, you know, we're in the largest law firm in the country. We have Republicans and Democrats, but we sit down together many days on an informal luncheon, and
right.
Albert will defend Republican positions. I may defend a Democratic position, but we realize this, the importance of us working together and getting along. I think we've lost that in Congress today in a lot of measures.
Yeah. There's no question. Bipartisanship is much more likely to break out after in Congress. There's certain team forces that come into play. And it's almost like in a sporting event where people are out to really crush each other during the game. You get out of the game, everybody's patting backs and that sort of thing. It's unfortunate, but what we've got to try to do is encourage more bipartisanship, find more areas of common interest as opposed to areas where we have very divergent views. Too much attention is given to our divergent views, right, and not enough to areas where we could actually compromise. Recently, a bill passed, a compromise bill passed on prison reform. And Democrats, African-American members, Republican members, 350 members voted for that
right.
bill. That was significant. Not talked about, but very significant. Common ground.
And you both talked about it in there. Unfortunately, with a lot of the coverage we get, something like that never made a headline.
Right.
We never saw something that said, hey, great news, we had this overwhelming bipartisan support for an issue, got something done. You never read about it. Didn't make page 10, let alone.
And Mike, you know, there's no institution in America that's ever been perfect, but I think most Americans hear all the bad stuff and tend to think every institution's corrupt, everything is broken,
right,
and want to throw it to the curb instead of saying, how do we fix it?
Yeah, and I hate to, kind of bash the media, but there is a responsibility to be a bit more balanced and not focus so much on the negative. As he was saying in the course of our conversation earlier, that, there's so much negative media reporting that people do get a feeling that everything's gone bad, everyone's corrupt, and nobody can work together. And that's just not true.
Well, and you had said in your comments, too, just about beware of the when someone starts off with those kind of like lead-in phrases that indicate, wait a minute, this is opinion, not fact, right?
Right.
And there's a lot of that, the overwhelming amount of that in the media
Not authorized to speak on
all
record.
that stuff, exactly, right?
Yeah.
So, when we talk about our issues at GBTA, it's, I always say they're apple pie motherhood issues. They're, what don't you like about safe and secure skies, making sure, responsible taxation for our industry, investing in infrastructure. I think, we can talk to everyone and in concept they agree. But in this environment, how do we best navigate to really help get our issues across? What do we need to be doing to do that in this really polarized environment?
I think the theme that came through in the discussion with the larger group was this: build relationships.
Right.
No permanent friends, no permanent enemies. Get to know your congressman, get to know the congressional staff that works for that congressman, make sure they're well educated on the issues. And when you bring an issue forward, bring it forward on a bipartisan basis. That's why our firm works as a team, because he can take a Republican member, I can take a Democratic member on the same issue and say, this is why this is a good idea. Pretty soon you've got, bipartisanship springing up.
Right. And it's a year-round effort, right?
And the other thing, Mike, is it's not going to happen quickly sometimes.
Right.
Keeping people at the table. I remember years ago in the state legislature, I wrote a very complicated piece of legislation. I had the treasurer in the office with me. The lawyers got up 7 times to walk out saying, we can't do this. And each time she just said, sit down, we're going to do it. And oftentimes it's bringing people to the table and saying, wait a minute, let's keep talking, and you get the solution.
Right. Well, so last question, wrap up. Any tips for our members and for our audience just about again working this environment? How do we keep this going and have some success here in Washington?
I think Albert and I both would agree. Relationships. Second, demeanor. Don't get into the yelling and screaming that we see so much on TV today. And the third thing is stay at it. I mean, and maybe the fourth thing is this is important stuff. I mean, we talked in there. This is important to our economy. Our economy is important to everything else that we do. It's important that these issues get dealt with.
Yeah, and my approach is pretty similar. This is not a zero-sum game. I win, you lose. It's a game where people come together, everybody gets some of what they want, hopefully most of what they want. So coming in with the attitude that you're willing to compromise is very important to ultimate success. Spending the time, it may take a year, it may take 2 years to educate folks to get to that point. It's a good investment in getting good results.
Well, gentlemen, great advice. Representatives Forbes and Wynn, you guys are terrific. Appreciate you coming here today. I'm Mike McCormick, live from Ronald Reagan Center at the Capitol Center here in Washington, D.C. for GBTA's Legislative Summit.